Next I'm going to install spark plug tube seals. Here's the part number. Again, I'll have them listed at the bottom. Next thing I'm getting ready to do is put the valve cover gasket on. So before I do that, you're going to have to put a thin layer of RTB silicone onto these half moon parts, right, on both sides of the head. So the manual recommends using a 3-bond product, but I have like Toyota Seal Packing FIPG, which is used for oil pans on Toyotas, and I've had excellent luck with this. So I'm just going to use a tiny bit of this. You don't need a lot since you actually have a gasket there already. Just a thin smear should be totally fine. Putting more than you need is actually bad because you end up with lumps of silicone in your oil, which is really bad. I just seated this gasket on here with RTV silicone applied, just pressed it down all along the sides. Unfortunately my camera overheated just as I was putting it on, and I couldn't wait because the RTV silicone has a setup time. So next I'm going to prep the valve cover and put it back on. Cover is ready. I just gave it a quick spritz, got it nice and clean, and we have our grommets here. I want to put this guy again, brand new grommets. I'll have the part numbers in the description, but if you want to look at it really quick, 920551352. This washer, these grommets have two sides, rubber side and a metal side. Metal side needs to face up. So it's seated. The instructions are to leave it for 15 minutes for the form in place gasket to set up, and then actually torque it down to spec. Okay, not even a crow's foot is going to work with this guy, so we're just going to have to do this one bolt by feel. That feels about right. So all of them are torqued to 87 inch-pounds. This should be all set. Okay, moving on. Okay, next thing I want to do is get the coils back in there. It's pretty straightforward. The only extra step I'm going to take is put some dielectric grease in the coils, in the bottom of the coil, so that we prevent any electricity leakage. The stuff I'm going to be using is just some simple silicone paste dielectric grease. Make sure you push them all the way in and there's no gap remaining here. The manual says to pull up slightly to make sure they're fully engaged. I'm pretty sure these guys are fully engaged. Okay. think the next thing I want to do is actually get this rubber sheet back over. What I'm starting to do next is get some of these connectors and hoses situated back where they came from. So the first thing I'm doing is putting this bracket at this corner back on, which holds these hoses as well as this connector. So obviously I've taken the connector off and I'm just getting this screwed back on. This is just an 8mm like little nut that sits on the edge of the valve cover. This guy back through. Those are the 4 spark plug connectors. Sorry, coil connectors. They go through. And got there. That's clipped back on there. So then next I can connect the 4 coils back up. That's the coils all connected. Okay, so I had to get this whole harness back through. So this big square connector here, this big square connector here connects to this guy, and then this is all the harness that goes on the back of the throttle body. Part of this will get plugged in underneath and part of it will get plugged in above the throttle bodies. Next I'm going to connect this cleaner tube, cleaner valve. Okay. Next thing I want to do is get the throttle bodies cleaned up. I just flipped it over and I was just looking over the condition, and you can see there's some accumulation of dirt around the base of the throttle bodies, and there's a little bit of dirt in the actual throttle tubes themselves. So I'm just gonna clean this slightly. The one thing to be careful about is there is let me grab a light. So as you can see, there's a little bit of deposits on the inside of the throttle tubes themselves, but the one thing to be careful about, as I was saying, is that the factory applies like this black substance on the inside, and you're not supposed to take that off because that is meant to perfectly seal the throttle when it's fully closed. So you just need to clean a little bit on the inside over here, but try not to get all that perfect sealing stuff off. So let me just do that really quick. Okay, I have the throttle bodies cleaned off pretty well. Mostly just brake clean on a rag or on a toothbrush. Scrub some stuff off, spread some on a cloth, and just wipe the insides. So overall pretty clean. Continuing on, I think I want to try and get the throttle body placed in here and all the connectors connected, just so we have a good idea of where all the connectors go and all that good stuff. Take these off. Really cool thing about these Z-extends is they come with these factory like machine ports. Which is super uncommon. They almost look like they've been flow machined or hand ported. It's beautiful. It's gonna feed these throttle cables in. Sneak this guy in here. So I know we have a number of connections we need to make at the bottom. This guy comes out here. This throttle is approximately in the right place. These guys out of the way. This big brown connector goes here. There's one connector from here, this guy I believe, that goes all the way down there. Yep, see that guy? Click that guy in, and this green connector connects here. This is a bit fiddly. Come on, green connector. The problem with having such compact design is sometimes you end up in a situation like this where assembly can be quite difficult. Okay. It's 3-year connected. This guy here on top. Got the big brown guy connected. I'm gonna pause on putting the connectors on for a second and get this throttle body seated. I think it's most of the way seated already. I'm just gonna make sure it's all the way in. Give it a nice shove. Yeah, again, just so that we're not getting any dirt in there. I'm going to do a couple of hose connections. So vacuum hoses. So this brown hose that comes out from the bottom of this canister here goes snakes all the way across and gets connected to this. Let me see. Yeah, there's the brass nipple at the left end here where it gets connected, and then this hose that comes out of the big black box Evap canister is going to get connected here in the one that's in the middle of the throttle body, so cylinder 2. I want to put this guy back. I was holding these lines together. Next, I'd like to get this bracket put back on so that the engine is mounted securely. We'll put both brackets on, and then I'd like to put more pressure on the throttle bodies and make sure they are seated before we tighten that. But obviously, to do that, I want to get these brackets put on so that the engine is securely mounted. I'm just getting everything loosely mocked up first before I torque anything down. Okay, so the manual mentions that the engine mounting bolts have to be done in a sequence, but they only give the sequence for the main mounting bolts to the engine and not a sequence for anything with the brackets. So I'm assuming these are just secondary bolts, but there's an order in which the torque spec for the bolts are listed, so I'm going to follow that order. And as per that order, the first thing that gets torqued is this bolt right here, the big one in the front that goes up into the frame. And this is 44 Newton meters or 33 pound-feet. So we'll torque this guy first. Next, it's these two small bolts up here, and these are 18 pound-feet. The second bolt is almost impossible to get, but I managed to sneak a torque wrench in there, this angle, and actually grab a hold of it and torque it down. 18 foot-pounds. Let's move on to the next side. The next things we're going to torque on are 1, 2, 3, these 3 bolts. These are all 44 Newton meters or 33 foot-pounds again. Same story on the other side. We'll follow the same order. Put this bracket in. Okay, so in messing with this side, Seems like this bracket right here on which this connector is bolted and these 3 lines are running is really getting in the way. So I'm going to take this bracket off and we put those bolts in, and then we can put the bracket back on. That is significantly easier. Yeah, I guess the trick is to have the outside bracket off, put these bolts in, torque all 3 of this down, then put this bracket on. It should make sense based on the order in which they had said to do it in the manual. Hopefully, some of you guys will avoid my failure. These 2 guys to 18 foot-pounds. Much easier. Okay, next I'm going to put this bracket on. This bracket back on, I should say. One thing to note is these 2 bolts go through both brackets, so the big engine bracket as well as this little mounting bracket, which holds this foam pad as well as this harness connector, etc. The torque spec for all 3 of these bolts is 33 foot-pounds or 44 Newton meters. Next I'm going to seat these throttle bodies all the way down, give them a good press, make sure they're all the way in before tightening the 2. Tightening the 2 clamps, one from this side and one from this side. So these don't require a lot of torque, almost just a little more than hand tight is good for these. Next we'll put this guy on here. In retrospect, I would definitely recommend not separating this plastic plate from the throttle bodies themselves while disassembling. I'll make sure I put that in the when I edit the video. To reconnect the PCB hose. See the PCB now, this is the fresh air hose. That is seated. Now at this stage you want to make absolutely sure that your throttle bodies are seated all the way. Now it's really hard to tell, but if you look very carefully right there, you can just see one sort of ring at the top of the throttle body, which is basically seated flush with the black rubber boot, and that should be the same across all your throttle bodies. So make sure this is seated properly, otherwise all your future steps nothing is going to fit correctly. I'm going to leave the airbox off for now. I think next what I want to do is get the radiator set up in place and get all that tidied up. I'm going to take this opportunity to clean all the oil and old dirt off of here before we put the radiator on. Everything I can reach reasonably good clean. So it's relatively oil free. Now we'll continue on and install the radiator. Before I start putting the radiator in, I see the engine crank position sensor connected here, which needs to connect to this gray connector that's hanging out here. I'm going to try to push the radiator in through here, under this, and then we should be able to. So there are 3 mounting points for the radiator. 1, 2 and 3 at the bottom here. Hopefully you're seeing all 3 here. Okay. 1, 2 and 3 at the bottom. 2 of them are held on by bolts, and then one of them there's just a peg that's coming off the frame right here that I'll show you in a second. So what I'm going to do is like mount the radiator on this peg first, and then we can put the bolts in. So there are slits in the rubber sheet for all the parts of the radiator that stick out essentially. So we get it through, get these things through there. This connector is going to give me trouble. Okay, I'm going to have to disconnect this and then reconnect it once. Figured out the routing for this wire. It's just the connector that I just connected. First let me actually put this guy back. Forgot to stick this bracket back on here. So this is the bracket we took off to get the, a little while ago. It was on the side of the valve cover with the 8mm bolt. This guy is on, so that means all these tubes go over the rubber sheet. I think I should be able to mount the radiator now. Be very careful while you're handling the radiator. You don't want to bump into random things and damage the fins. So I just hung the radiator on the peg on the frame right there. It's kind of hard to see right now, but there's a peg on the frame right here. See where the grommet is? That's the peg on which I just hung the radiator. Now the other 2 mount points are, one, this guy here will mount here. There's a mount point on the frame right here on which this grommet will go. So I'm going to put this screw through that right now. Yeah, just making sure you have all the sticky outy bits of the radiator coming through the rubber sheet. Now hopefully you're able to see the grommet. I'm going to use an extension and a 10mm just to ease the access. Just snug will do. I am going to connect the bottom of the radiator next. Next I'm just going to connect the radiator fan. There's a bracket here. Get the rubber sheet over that. So I'm going to try to put the clamp back exactly where it came off of by looking at the indentations on the on the hose, just because that ensures a really good seal. Again, this is a really small fastener. It's an aluminum tube. You just want it to be snug, not super tight. Don't go crushing the tube. Okay, this guy clips in to this like that. Perfect. Let's go to the other side of the radiator and get all the hoses connected. So there are two hoses up here. One big guy that goes here and this little guy goes here. I've got to give this a quick cleanup, maybe with some sandpaper or something. Okay, that's reasonably clean. Got all the big crusties off. Now I'm just gonna connect these hoses. This guy has a fat clamp. I don't know. This guy. It's all the way in. There's one return hose here at the bottom. I believe that's all the connections for all the fluid connections for the radiator complete, as well as electrical. There's just one, which is the fan. Now I need to figure out how this cam position sensor wire routes, because the gray connector is on the other side of the engine. So I snuck the connector through the cut in the rubber sheet where one of these air hoses at the top of. Let me see if I can get it to connect now. Okay, this guy's connected here. Put this guy back. That connects there. Beautiful. Okay. Okay, next I'm going to mount this guy. I think it goes like this. Actually, I'm pretty sure it goes like this because the Evap canister has to sit here, which will mount into the side panel. So this guy is gonna sit like right here. Okay, I found where this guy connects. It's actually not anything off the bike. It is to the top of this guy right here. Alright, let me get that plugged in. Yeah, it is connected. So that explains pretty much every connector, I believe. We have everything fully connected up back together. Sweet. I think the next step is going to be to try and get the airbox fitted. Okay. Yeah, obviously the trick is to wedge it in sideways and then try to twist it clockwise till it gets into position. Now put the temperature sensor back. Connect the connectors. Now there are a couple of connections at the bottom of the airbox that we need to make. There is one drain tube that connects to the side here, and then the main PCB that connects to the front. So try and get those situated correctly. So there are these two tubes. So one is this PCB tube right here, and then the other is the drain tube that will connect right here. After much struggle, the clip is back in place. I hate these little clips. Okay, I think that is all set. We can now, I think, safely bolt these guys back in place. Get the Airbox seated. So since I can't reach a couple of these bolts very well, just gonna put a little bit of blue tape on the Allen key and then stick this on, so now it won't fall off. All the 5 bolts here are tightened up. Just snug again, I'm sure there's a dog spec, but now I'm going to get these connected here. This is what these should look like. The inner lip should be sitting on the inside of the airbox, and the outer lip should be sitting on the outside, and then there's a little hole here that connects to a rubber tab on the airbox. The air filter just slides in here. You just line these up, slide it in. So it came with a K&N air filter, but I prefer the OEM, so I'm just going to replace it with the OEM. Now, put this guy on. Snug them all up by hand. Okay, next I think I want to put the fuel tank back on. I'm going to now start connecting all the myriad connections that are here. I'm going to probably start with connecting the fuel tank to the main fuel line. The fuel tank's fairly empty, but it's been leaking a small amount of fuel. I'd like to just get it connected. So once you pull the red tab out, I'm going to bring the camera in here a second. So when we disconnect this, we pull this red tab out from back here, so out this way, and when you reconnect it, you push it all the way back in, and then the red tab pushes in and it clicks, then you know that it's connected. Okay, next I'm going to connect these two Evap lines that we had moved out of the way. So these come in through the inside. Pass these down through the inside of the frame again. Okay, these are ready to be connected, but there isn't enough slack in the line to connect it when the tank is pulled all the way up. Let's go to the other side and get the electrical connector connected. Now I'm going to take the support off, hold the tank as I bring this down. And try to get these lines on. I believe that is all the fuel tank connections. We just need to torque the main bolt at the back. We forgot one connection, which is this drain here. That just slips on right there. There doesn't appear to be any torque spec for this, so I'm just gonna hand tight it lightly. That's the fuel tank installed. Next, I think I'm going to try to get the throttle cables set up. Alright, it's pretty self-explanatory. There's a little plastic piece that fits into the bottom of this, and then you just hook the two cables onto the cable holders, and everything just sort of fits together, two halves. Next, I think I want to put the headlight assembly on. Okay. I got the Evap canister seated back in here. Feels like there should be something more holding that. Did I remove this? Yeah. Let me pull this bolt off. I removed it to disconnect it. Let's take it off again. These guys off. There we go. Much easier. I got these two large connectors, gray connectors connected, and the bracket that they mount to bolts on with this bolt. So I bolted that in. So that is all set. Then I routed this cable that comes from the ignition switch down through the white loop here, and that connects to this big white connector here. So that's how the routing is supposed to go, I believe. It's slowly starting to look like a motorcycle again. Okay, let's get the front cleaned up a little bit, then we can put the windscreen and the mirrors back on.